All right. Welcome in to the Big Orange post-game reaction show with myself, Charlie Burris, and Jonathan Crompton, former Vols quarterback, going to give his expertise on what we just saw. Tennessee 38, Bowling Green 6, a 32-point win, and only at Tennessee. It's not only at Tennessee. There are probably other schools that would do this, but it seems like it's only at Tennessee where you can win by 32. And somehow it kind of feels like a loss. I don't know if it feels like a loss. That's an exaggeration, probably. But people are not as happy as they probably could be. Comments are already flowing in.
Oh, yeah.
Second comment right there from Jeff Rubel. That was ugly. Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are saying that. What did you think of the game?
Oh, man. Well, first off, they did not cover.
Ooh, yes, and missed it by a
swim. Well, that brings up a whole can of worms that we don't need to get into. But how are they always so close? Like the odds makers. Just throwing it out there. Are they time travelers or what are they doing? I don't know. Okay, a whole different ball game. Man, I honestly, I'm not a statistician, and I am not going to act like I ever will be. But I'm curious as the last time we went a whole quarter without a completion. Ooh, and I don't, like I said, and I'm not saying that in a slight. I'm just we ran the crap out of the ball. The whole first drive of the third quarter, we did not attempt one pass. I was a little surprised by that, honestly. And halfway through the third quarter, I had to mute my TV because that was atrocious announcing. I just personal opinion. Sorry, that's my little rant for the evening. But I turned it off after I heard. I don't remember which one was saying it. It might have been Rogers saying how, the old cliche: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I get it, but you can tell our playbook is very, very small right now. I mean, I can see the game plan sheet. It's an 8x11 piece of paper. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm saying that's how you become very predictable. Notice, just look so for people, I want you to randomly start paying attention. The big laminated sheet of paper that the coordinator or the head coach, or if it's the same person, whatever, carries around, that's your game plan sheet. The typical one is 8.5 by 14. Typical. Ours seems to be very limited, and it might be because Milton he didn't get a spring, but it also, this coordinator also was at Iowa State, and their stuff is very limited as well. So that's going to be our biggest hurdle, is getting over being very predictable. When everybody saw the graphic. We lost 11 players. We gained 10, but we weren't very good with those other 11 anyway. So we're not a better team than we were last year at this moment as far as players. So we're going to have to get some sort of creativity behind us. That's just, kind of my synopsis of the second half and kind of where we're going to go in the season as a whole. But we can't miss deep ball. That 38 points seems very low. We missed the touchdown in the first half, missed the touchdown in the second half, overthrew him, the same player, dropped too many balls over the middle. A win is a win. So we obviously should be smiling about that. But the reality of the situation is we left at least 21 to 28 points out there tonight against a very, very, very below average Bowling Green team.
I agree completely. I'll ask this. How much of all of these factors do you put on the fact that it was game one of the Heupel regime, and game one was against a team that, let's be totally honest about what we just saw, a team that is awful and devoid of much talent at all. Do you give any credence? I kind of asked this at halftime, but I'll ask it again now that we've seen the whole thing. Do you give any credence to that? It's just Bowling Green. They're not trying to show their deck of cards as much. Do you bring that into the equation at all?
Personally, I don't. Because if you go into it each game, you go into each game trying to win each game the best you can win it. Whatever means necessary. So I've never been around a coach that says, "Hey, we're gonna back burner all these really good plays for next week." Well, next week's, in football terms, next week's not guaranteed. You know what I mean? Like in that sense. So yeah. I would not think a coach would do that, especially at this level. And I could be wrong, but I've never been around one. I mean, they'll always be like, "Hey, we're gonna run this play next week. We're gonna set it up with this kind of this week because we know it'll work next week." But not, you know what I'm saying? Not where it's like, "Hey, we're just gonna try to win this game and be very vanilla." I've never been around that personally. I'm just I don't know. I mean, like you said, it's hard to say that 38 points feels like a loss, but I'm not saying that it feels like we lost. I'm just saying that it doesn't feel as good as it should. I mean, yeah, I know it's game one, a lot of rust, a lot of new faces. I get it. But we got to, where's the flair that was at Missouri? Where's the flair that was at UCF? Exactly. Where's the stuff that we were all expecting to see that we didn't see tonight? So I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with what you said. I'm not going to put a full-blown plus or minus on this until the end of next week.
Yeah, I still stick by that for sure, because it's just – this is a starter game because Bowling Green is so bad.
Yeah.
So egregiously bad. It's tough to pull a whole lot from it. I think you can pull at a baseline some things like it is not all there for Joe Milton at the moment. It is, and it opens that discussion of, is the playbook limited because of the limitations of the quarterback or the entire set of skill players? You can go down that rabbit hole all you want. Honestly, let's do to a certain extent. Because there was a few factors here that I saw that I think bring into question, what do we attribute to Milton here? Obviously, you can say a lot, and I think a lot of people were putting this in the comments too. He kind of throws flat-footed. You said that at halftime also, along with folks in the comments. And he seems to be holding on to the ball, is a little indecisive, some things like that. Also, there are a lot of wide receiver drops out there, but he throws the ball at 1,000 miles per hour. So is it more on Milton or is it more on the receivers? There's kind of a lot to unpack just at the quarterback position.
We could go on for hours on this, and I'm gonna kind of touch on a comment that was about 4 or 5 minutes ago from Ben. Can you teach touch on the throws? Yes, you can if you know what you're doing. It's not easy. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like it's, just flip the switch. There it is. There's so many different techniques that you can do. And touch actually comes from the flick of your wrist, right? And you're throwing the ball is not arm. I don't care what anybody tells you. Throwing the ball is your waist and your feet. Your shoulder is like a golf club. It's there. And it gets all the credit, but I'm going to say this, and it's going to spark a lot of controversy, not necessarily here, but for random people that see this. There is a well-known quarterback trainer out of Atlanta named Quincy Avery, and this dude is spot on when he says this. There are a lot of college coaches that don't know what the hell they're doing when they're teaching, but they have the job. And I'm talking about fundamentals. Okay, I'm not talking about X's and O's. I'm talking about fundamentals. Because all these deep balls, when I train my quarterbacks, I teach them all the time, and I use this saying a lot. Your shoulders have to be level to your throw. Keywords, to your throw. If I'm throwing a post route, my shoulders or my shoulder level is different than I'm throwing a dig or if I'm throwing a hitch. his shoulder level does not change. And it's not a slight on him, because at a certain point you can't teach yourself. You've got to have people that are there behind you, behind the scenes, teaching you these things and making you practice these things. Dude's got a cannon. I'm not ever going to argue that. Dude throws a super pretty ball. But at the end of the day, we've got to be efficient. When we've got guys running wide open on post routes, here's the thing. Everybody says, oh, well, Jordan Rogers, side note, not the best commentary guy. Back on point. Hit the nail on the head on this, though. Said, oh, he throws it so flat. Well, get your shoulders level to your throw, aka that, and the trajectory of your ball goes from here to there. Automatic. That's how you get that pretty turnover where everybody says, oh, drop it in the bucket. Right? Those are some of the things that he's missing. It's not that he's making wrong reads. That's a positive. Right? He's not throwing into quadruple coverage. That's a positive. So far, he hasn't turned the ball over besides that sack. That's a positive. So the things that he needs to be working on are the fundamentals that obviously he's not being taught.
Here's what I would ask you, because I think you had a very interesting experience with it during your time at Tennessee that I think could relate to maybe some of what Joe Milton is going through. You saw two coaches all at the same school. Specifically, you had Cutcliffe, then you had and then Clausen. Yeah, I'm remembering that correctly. It was Cutcliffe, then Clausen, and even an additional one too. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, so you saw three.
No, Randy Sanders, 4.
Oh, that's right. Wow. Okay.
We'll just keep going. We'll keep going.
But from that experience, can you kind of speak to what Joe Milton might be experiencing? Like, he just came from one coach. Yeah. Can that throw you through a loop? You also said, I mean, he missed spring in Tennessee. Yep. He only had fall ball. Like, what can that do?
And that's what I was getting at, is like the things that I'm speaking on as far as fundamentals are, you can't teach yourself certain things. You know what I mean? Like, once you've been taught them, yeah, you can go practice them by yourself, do all that, but you've got to have somebody there teaching you fundamentals. And so I remember watching a thing. It was when Hard Knocks first started, way back when, right? They were with the Baltimore Ravens. Might have been the first and or second year they did it. And I cannot remember the quarterback that was there, a rookie quarterback. And the coach even said, he goes, son, listen, I don't have the time at this level to teach you fundamentals. If you don't know them by now, that's on you. And that hit home to me. I mean, I was probably, when did that start? I was probably somewhere in high school. Can't remember exactly what year, but that hit home. I was like, man, these dudes, when you leave high school, they're not here to care about you that way, right? Because at the end of the day, their job requires on you producing. Well, they've got multiple kids to get produced or to get ready to produce. So is he being taught fundamentals? I have no idea. But there's a comment that asks, is it too late to teach those things? Not even close. Throwing motions, yes. That stuff is, you can tweak them. It's hard to change those, man, when you're this level and you're at this point, he's probably 20, 21 years old. That's tough to change because it's been what you're doing since you were 7, 8, 9 years old. Can it be done? Yes. Is it very hard to do that? Yes. But the fundamentals of shoulder level, dude, that's easy to teach. That is so easy to teach. Like I said, I train quarterbacks for a living. It is proper fundamentals when it comes to that. So if he could get that stuff down, his deep ball is going to be a lot more effective, which in turn, then if that happens tonight, we're not having this conversation.
For sure. So I think we're basically in agreement. Take this game with a grain of salt. We'll really see more what this team is made of next week against Pitt, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's do this first, which I think this is going to be fun. We want to get these comments going, get people's reaction. Let's just ask. Just rate it. Josh Heupel's first game at Tennessee, 1 to 10. Ooh. You saw it, and if you want to expound on that, it looks like we got 200 people watching right now. So just throw a number in the chat there, and just tell us what you think overall. Because to me, I saw like defense decent overall. 6 points from Bowling Green. They held him to 0 in the second half. It kind of, I think against better opponents, it's going to be a little bit of a bend, don't break, hopefully. at its best.
And you know what? That's perfectly fine though. If as long as it
works.
I don't care if they get down to the 1 yard line. Just don't give up a touchdown. Like if we just give up field goals, we'll win a lot more games than we lose.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with that.
Absolutely.
At this stage, we'll say it's at this stage. Later on, next couple of years, obviously not. But for right now, I would 100% take that.
Yeah, that's the position that you're in right now. You're just not stacked to the hilt with players. It just is what it is. Let's see some of these reactions. A whole lot of 6s, 5s, 6s. 6 only because we won from Tyree Beatty. 5 we should have used Bailey, says Randy Melton. 7. I lost one that I was reading there. 7.3 adjustments were made and running game looked good. And I will say that in that second half, there were adjustments made. They went strictly to the ground game. They went away from Joe Milton throwing the ball because it was clear he was a little shaken up through the air.
We'll see what's this. Now here, I just thought of this because before that comment was read, I was going to say to you, what was your most surprising position tonight? Mine was going to be running backs. So watch this. Here's a really good hypothetical question, right? Okay. In the sense of, maybe, because obviously we're not in these meeting rooms, and when they're game planning, they could have strictly had a game plan that says, you know what, if we have the lead in the half, we're going to get our young running backs that have zero experience a lot of reps tonight against a not so good team, because we're going to start playing better opponents later. We're just going to run the piss out of the ball the second half. That could have been the game plan.
Sure.
Legit. We won't know that. If that was the game plan and we knew that, then I would feel a lot better about the second half.
And yes, exactly. And it's stuff like that that makes me, that is the main thrust of why I say I'm not putting a ton of stock into this Bowling Green game. I mean, I just can't. I think that would kind of be a fool's errand. I think you can notice some definite markers with stuff like the way Joe Milton throws the ball. But overall, this is just not the product I think you're going to see next week down to a T. At least, Lordy, I hope not, because I think next week won't go so hot.
Well, you know what? Hey, what's this? We were seeing a lot of 4s and 5s and 6s. You know what? Drew Williams, good for you. 10, they didn't lose.
Spot on.
No, and I like that though, because at the end of the day, like we said in halftime, a win is a win is a win, right? If we win by 1 point, at least it doesn't go down as an L. But we have high expectations because of what he's done at Hypo. I mean, everywhere else he's been as far as offensively. And I mean, dude, I'm looking at it right here. We rushed for 326 yards. My hope was to be throw for 326, rush for 145, but we threw for 145, rush for 326. But that's just the quarterback in me, right? So at the end of the day, I mean, dude, we still had almost 500 yards of offense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is hard to argue with. Obviously, we should have had a lot more against a Bowling Green team, but not too shabby for a first game.
I would tend to agree with all of that. And let's say we'll get into what this means for next week in just a second, and I'll throw in here quickly this edition of the A to Z Sports post-game reaction show is brought to you by the other content on A2ZSports.com. If you do not know who I am, Charlie Burris. I was a radio personality in Knoxville for years with another Tennessee great, Jason Swain. I was his co-host for a long time. And now I host a podcast for A to Z Sports called The Big Orange Podcast that we drop on Mondays. I host that with Zach Reagan, who's a writer for A to Z Sports. You'll notice some of his columns popping up after this game today. And I think he already has one up. The dude is efficient, if he's nothing else. And so me and Zach talk Vols every week. And if that sounds like something you want to listen to, Apple, Spotify, A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed. You can find it there. And then there's also Predators Podcast, Titans Podcast. It's some Buck Rising, if you know. That's what you want to listen to.
Buck getting a shout out tonight. Love it.
But it's all there on A to Z Sports VOLS.com, and we'll let them be the sponsor for tonight. I'll let me be the sponsor for my own show. Just a little
Love it.
shameless self-promotion there.
Not mad at that at all.
Yeah, you got to do what I got to do.
Exactly. Hey man, that's what we do. We got this.
If I didn't like hearing myself talk, I wouldn't be doing this. But let's move on to, what does this game mean for next week against Pittsburgh? I think, honestly, we already said we're taking this with a grain of salt. Because it's just Bowling Green. It's a weird game. Josh Heupel's first game of a new tenure.
Yeah.
But where do we go from here with a pretty tough game 1 week away?
Well, watch this real quick. Shout out to Ben Hall, comment of the night. He didn't Georgia State this thing, so I'll take it.
Yes, sir.
Love it. Love it. And I say that because we've seen a game where we should be like, hey, man, we should beat the piss out of this team. We're coming out going, what just happened? Right? So at least that didn't happen. But going into next week, I'm curious. I was also curious that who would really go in second in the quote-unquote mop-up duty at the quarterback position, and obviously Hooker went in. So I was because they always do list the number 2 and 3 as or. I was very curious on that, and Hooker going in. It's confusing a little bit because he's got a lot of game experience. You know what I mean? So, hypothetically, what's going on behind closed doors that Bailey, who was a very highly recruited guy, didn't get this mop-up duty? I don't know.
That was probably – it was a thing that happened in passing because it was just in the final 2 minutes of the game, and I think a lot of people probably had it turned off at that point.
I had it muted, so yeah.
Yeah, you were halfway there. And Hendon Hooker comes in, and everybody, if you were thinking second quarterback, I think everybody was thinking Harrison Bailey. I think back to the spring game, Hendon Hooker, it's a spring game, and you got to take that at what it is. But Hendon Hooker, I watched that spring game and I went, I don't know if this guy's, he might just kind of be there for arbitrary competition,
and he very well might be. Almost as an insurance policy.
Yes, and so you could say about that situation, read into it at your own risk. I would say that much. Does that mean that he's the guy over Bailey? Maybe. And what, I think for this Pitt game, what happens if things go south really quick?
Well, and so the reason why I brought that up is leading back into how you brought up the Pitt game, because I go back to what Heupel said when he announced Milton the starter. And I'm not going to say verbatim because I don't remember the exact quote, but in my words was when they asked him, are we going to see more and more quarterback? And his answer was, in some form of words, no position is ever as good with one guy. So that tells me he has a thought of playing two guys. So which one's going in? If we do a 2 quarterback system next week, who would that be is kind of why I brought that up.
Yeah, and it's a good point, and it'll be interesting to watch how, from what we saw of the defense, what do you think? Pitt has this senior, I believe, a senior quarterback, at the very least, a returning. Okay,
he's a 6th-year senior, yeah,
even more so. A returning 6-year quarterback who showed some last year. They won 6 games, and I believe a couple of the games that they lost, he wasn't playing.
Yeah,
they had close losses. They could have been wins. And so, it could be there for this Pitt team.
And it could be because Pitt's not necessarily a pushover.
Yeah, definitely not. And that's what I'm getting at. I would say specifically from what you saw of the defense, kind of how we assessed initially, it might be a bend don't break situation. How do you see them next week against a more powerful offense?
Oh, honestly, that's a really good question, because as long as we keep the bend but don't break mentality right now, I think that's a good thing. I did like to see 2 4th-down stops, right? To me, I don't care who you're playing. Doesn't matter. I don't care if it's a true freshman center or not. those are still not in the defense's favor, right? So to see those 4th down stops was a positive for me. I did like his flying around. I mean, I thought we did some good things on defense, but it is going to be a little bit different of an offense next week. I mean, more in the sense of they're just better than Bowling Green, right? So I'm curious as far as that as well. I think we're going to fare well against them. I do, just because it's a dip in after. Let's call it like it is, man. Pitt's home games aren't that. They're not the biggest thing in town. When you come to Knoxville, that's going to be a different atmosphere for Pitt. All right, let's just call it like it is. Where does Pitt play on the road that it's going to be an atmosphere like Knoxville?
That's a great point.
You see what I'm saying? Like, so to me, and also coming from last year, there was no atmosphere, right? So to me, I think that's our advantage. I really think so. And then the way our defense played tonight, played well enough and did the things they had to do, got after the quarterback, 4th down stops. My biggest concern is just the drops on offense. I loved what I saw by the running backs tonight. I really did. I know it's against Bowling Green, but, man, who cares? They're still out there. You still got to tackle them. Still got to make them miss. So my biggest concern is not necessarily defensively. It's our receivers living up to the hype that we all think they should to keep us on the field, to keep the defense off the field. You know what I'm saying? That's the reason why I'm saying the defense, if we can stay on the field and keep our defense fresh, I think our defense's mentality right now is going to work out well.
I hope so. All I want for this team after watching this game is for this not necessarily to be an anomaly, but to kind of be a building block where you go, okay, it wasn't picture perfect 70-point win over a joke of a team, but some good things happen, some not so good things happen that we can learn from.
Exactly. Great learning tools.
Yes. That's
great learning tools.
You have to have a move on and move up mentality, even from a 32-point win. I do want to bring up this comment from Deb Roberts. Thank you for watching. To everybody who's watching, we appreciate it. But she said, I can't believe all of the negative comments on the internet. Deb, did you start using the internet today? Because that's what the internet is for.
Well, hey, but I give Deb credit, because at the end of the day, man, she's not wrong. Like, in the sense of, we won the game.
That's a decent point.
I'm being critical just because I know what it's like behind those closed doors. But, dude, bottom line is we won. And the beauty of this is it wasn't a 70-0 route where guys get their head way up here and then next week get level-headed. It was one that were like, hey, man, we made some mistakes. And I saw this right here. Was it Ben? Hey, man, Ben's on top of stuff. Again, Jalen Hyde already called himself out on Twitter. Hey, I'm cool now. I'm good, because that shows ownership, right? If I own it myself and say, man, I messed up, I let my guys down by dropping this ball on 3rd down, that shows that you believe in yourself, that you're that good, and your team respects you for that, because you're not blaming somebody. Oh, it was a bad ball, or, oh, I didn't see it, or, whatever, right? Defender got in my way. That ownership right there is what we need. And so for him to already do that, kudos, and that pretty much answers my question to myself about him next week.
I don't think that you can understate the value of student leaders, what that would do for this team. That's the common thread that I saw from my time doing radio. We talked to a ton of former players, including yourself, and the common thread through all of that, when teams had success, was that those dudes talked about how they held each other accountable.
Oh, yeah.
All of them said that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you saw it in Pruitt's second year, where Juwan Jennings basically carried the team on his back. And when you have a dude like that who can bring the fire and bring it to his other teammates, raise them up. This team has to find guys like that.
But
and to see personal responsibility like that's nice.
No, exactly. And it's the fact of raising them up by also holding yourself to that standard, not just being the talker, right? But saying, listen, I'm going to be the one out here running all these sprints, blah, 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 blah. Come run with me, but I'm doing them. That type of stuff. Like, those are the guys you want to be around. And you can tell Hyatt is that guy, or at least the perception is he is that guy. And this tonight kind of proves it. So I'm all on board for that. I mean, I just, bottom line, we won. Was it pretty? No. Would I rather be an unpretty win week 1 than week 3 leading into Florida? Yes.
I think that's all that really needs to be said. Do you have, before we wrap it up here, it is getting exceedingly late now. Any final thoughts before anything you want to throw in before we sign off until next week in this nerve-wracking, frankly, pit game that's coming up?
I keep saying, so this one person real quick, where did it go? Lamont Graham. Maybe y'all need a better QB, LOL. Go Gamecocks. Well, you know what? Your Gamecocks QB is my little brother. So Zeb Nolan is my little brother. His dad is my high school coach.
You're kidding. Really?
No, his dad is my high school coach. That is my second family. And Zeb, I mean, for real, literally, this dude, his whole life has called me his big bro. I get introduced. We introduce each other as brothers. So that game's going to suck for me. You know what I'm saying? Because Zeb is, like I said, it's my little brother. And I hate to say it, I want him to throw for 550 yards against us. But I want us to win.
That's hilarious. And because it was the sort of the talk for a couple of days of college football this week, because he was a grad assistant, and then it turned out he had eligibility, and they were like, "Oh, we need somebody. Come on."
And the coolest part of it is going in and then winning the job. And that shows what type of competitor he is, and that shows what type of human being he is. And he's kind of had bad luck, I guess you could say, where he went. He went to Iowa State, redshirted, then beat Oklahoma, and then gets surpassed by Brock Purdy, who is now projected as a high round draft pick. Then goes North Dakota State. Trey Lance is there, number 3 pick. So it's always been like, well, damn, he just can't catch a break. You know what? Maybe this is his break. And that to me, I can't be more happy for him. It just sucks that we got to play each other. So, like I said, I hope he throws for 550 and we just win by 1. But I hope it's like a 75-74 game.
That's a hilarious connection. Well, cool. We'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Yes.
We got all season.
That'll be a fun week. That'll be a fun week.
The fun part of all of this is that this will be a recurring thing. We'll be back next week. I have been Charlie Burris. That has been Jonathan Crompton, former Tennessee QB, and the man with all the knowledge, bringing the heat tonight I don't think there could have been anybody better to talk about this in post game, because the entire talk of this game was the QB play. So this was perfect.
It was tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. You brought the knowledge, and I'll give all the spiel on the way out. I'm at Charlie_Burris on Twitter. You are at JCromp8, correct?
Yep.
Follow us there. Follow at A to Z Sports and AtoZSports.com for all the awesome stuff. And check out on Monday the Big Orange podcast with myself and Zach Reagan. If you want more of my nonsense, if I don't know why you would listen to that, but some people do occasionally. And so, I think Jonathan logged off. That's it for me, and we'll see y'all next week.